On January 17, 2026, the icebreaker Polar Star is pushing south through the Ross Sea and Antarctica on a routine resupply mission, the same mission it's run for 50 years. Everything seems routine until the call comes in. A cruise ship is trapped in pack ice, 8 miles out, 400 people. The ice is pushing from every direction and is actively crushing the ship. Now, the only heavy icebreaker the United States owns is diverting from its mission. If this ship gets damaged, there's no backup for either vessel, and the nearest help is 1,000 miles away. The Polar Star immediately swings east and drives toward the trapped cruise ship. Between here and there is 8 miles of the same ice that stopped a vessel built specifically for polar waters. And while 8 miles might not sound like much, the crew is about to face some insane obstacles to make it in time. Hours earlier, passengers were stepping off of helicopters onto the McMurdo Dry Valleys for a private tour. By evening, the pack ice shift, the floes locked together, and 17,000 tons of expedition yacht stopped moving. The maritime term is beset, and it doesn't mean just blocked. It means the ice is compressing around your hull from every direction, gripping the ship like a fist closing. And this is no ordinary cruise ship that wandered where it shouldn't be. The Scenic Eclipse II carries the highest ice classification a passenger vessel can get: reinforced hull, oversized stabilizers, azipod propulsion, 2 helicopters, a submarine, 114 suites with butler service. When you charge 6 figures a ticket, you build a ship that handles the ice. But this ship couldn't handle it anymore. That is what the Polar Star is there to do. Commissioned January 17, 1976, exactly 50 years ago tonight. 390 feet, 13,000 tons, 75,000 shaft horsepower. The most powerful non-nuclear icebreaker on Earth. Most ships avoid ice. This one was built to drive straight through it. The bow hits the ice edge and the first thing you hear is the sound of a ship doing what it was designed to do. The bow doesn't cut the ice the way a knife cuts bread. It climbs, angled at roughly 30 degrees. It's a ramp that converts forward momentum into downward force. 13,000 tons right up onto the surface, and gravity does the rest. The ice shatters. Fractures radiate downward from the point of impact. The ship drops through, drives forward, and does it again. Ride up, crack, drop through, drive forward. The bridge shudders with every impact. The hull groans. The crew braces. It's not graceful. It's a battering ram that floats. Here's where things get interesting. The hull absorbing that punishment is not ordinary steel. At polar temperatures, standard carbon steel turns brittle and cracks on impact. Not ideal for a ship whose entire job is hitting things. The Polar Star's hull is microalloyed steel reinforced with nickel, chromium, and manganese, engineered to stay tough at temperatures where most metals fail. In the bow and stern, the plating is 1.75 inches thick. Every impact it survives is metallurgy designed in the 1970s prove it still works half a century later. 3 miles in, the person reading the ice sees something the bridge crew below cannot. The ice pilot's not on the bridge. He's in the aloft conning station, a heated control position mounted over 100 feet above the waterline, 10 stories up, with windows on every side and a full set of ship controls. From up there, the ice shield spreads out like a map. You can see things that are invisible from the bridge. Compression patterns in the pack where flows are being squeezed together. Color variations that reveal thickness. Dark leads of open water snaking through the field. And pressure ridges from that bridge level look like low humps, but from 100 feet up reveal their full extent. An ice pilot is a specialist whose entire job is reading frozen water, understanding how ice behaves under pressure, where it is weakest, where it will crack, and where it will stop you. The ice pilot cons the ship from up here, calling heading and speed to the helm, choosing the path through the pack in real time based on what the ice is telling him. And what the ice is telling him is that the Scenic Eclipse doesn't have much time. The same pressure compressing the pack around the icebreaker is still squeezing the cruise ship. Every hour they spend breaking through, the hull takes more stress. Meanwhile, there's a pressure ridge dead ahead. Flows stacked on top of each other by wind and current into a wall of compressed ice twice as thick as the surrounding pack. The Polar Star hits it at speed. The bow climbs, the weight transfers, and the ice holds. forward momentum dies. The ship settles back and stops. The ice pilot picks a new angle, slightly port of the ridge where the surface looks thinner. The Polar Star backs up, builds speed, and drives at the new line. The bow rides up, the ice resists for a moment, and then it gives. The pressure ridge splits with a crack you can hear from the bridge wing. The ship punches through the gap and keeps moving. 5 miles to go. The ride up and drop rhythm resumes, the hull absorbing impact after impact. But that ridge costs time, and the ice around the cruise ship is not waiting. It's still compressing. And right now, every mile of progress is being paid for by machinery below decks that is just as old as the steel taking the hits. That machinery is 50 years old, and it's about to be pushed to its limits. The first few miles ran on diesel power. 6 Alco diesel spinning generators feeding electricity to motors on 3 propeller shafts, with a staggering 18,000 horsepower spread across a system where the engines never touch the propellers. That disconnect is the reason the ship is still moving. On a conventional vessel, engines bolt to propellers through a mechanical drivetrain. Every time a blade would catch solid ice, the torque spike rockets straight back through the chain. On a normal ship, that would mean sheared gear teeth, cracked couplings, a snapped shaft if the ice is thick enough. One bad impact and you're at a full stop in the water. The Polar Star has a special electrical system which absorbs those spikes in milliseconds, and the engines never feel it. But 5 miles in, the ice changes. The pack gets denser as the Polar Star approaches the compression zone around the cruise ship. The same pressure that trapped the Scenic Eclipse is affecting everything around it. The diesels are pushing, but the ship is slowing. Each impact breaks less ice. The bow rides up, and the pack holds longer before the ice gives. The ice pilot can see it from the aloft conning station, the color shifting from gray to white to blue as the pack thickens. The diesels alone are not going to get through this. That is when the gas turbines spool up. 3 Pratt & Whitney FT4A12s, aviation-derived engines, the same family of power plant you would find on a military helicopter. When they come online, the ship goes from 18,000 horsepower to 75,000. You can hear the difference from the bridge. You can feel it. The Polar Star surges forward into the heavier pack and pushes through ice that was slowing it to a crawl 30 seconds ago. But gas turbines burn fuel at a rate that would drain the tanks if you ran them continuously, so the crew manages the balance in real time. Diesels for the moderate stretches, turbines when the ice gets heavy, and the switch between the two is a judgment call that happens over and over across the remaining miles. The ice pilot calls for a back-end ram on a section of consolidated multi-year pack. The ship needs to reverse, build distance, and drive forward at speed. On most ships, reversing means stopping the engines and spinning them the other direction, which takes time, grinds components, and on a 50-year-old ship is something you want to do as rarely as possible. The crew changes blade angle without stopping. The thrust reverses instantly. The ship pulls back. In pack ice, that difference is everything. Pitch forward, thrust forward. The ship rams. The engines never stop turning. Across 8 miles of pack ice with hundreds of back and ram cycles, that is the difference between a propulsion system that lasts and one that tears itself apart. But controllable pitch comes at a cost. The hub mechanisms are complex. Ice contact wears them down. And after every single deployment, the Polar Star goes into dry dock to have the hubs pulled, inspected, and rebuilt. During the final year of the service life extension at Mare Island, the crew replaced all 3 propellers entirely. 50 acres of Antarctic ice is a lot to ask of any component. The ice is getting worse with every ship length now. The compression zone around the cruise ship is tightening the pack ahead. The Polar Star is pushing through the ice that is actively being squeezed together by the same forces that trap the vessel it's trying to reach. And then through the ice ahead, the crew sees it. A white expedition yacht frozen motionless, lit against the Antarctic twilight. Now it has to brake it precisely enough to free a ship without making the problem worse. Because the ice gripping the Scenic Eclipse II is not just blocking it, it's squeezing from every direction, and one wrong move tightens the grip instead of loosening it. The ice pilot reads the field around the Scenic Eclipse: thickness, compression direction, where the pack is weakest. Shock waves travel through consolidated ice the same way cracks do. Hit the wrong section at the wrong angle, and the pressure wave doesn't relieve the pack around the cruise ship. It drives ice harder against the hull. You're trying to loosen a grip, and a bad approach tightens it instead. The ice pilot has to read the compression patterns in the field and find the approach that will relieve the most pressure with the least risk of making things worse. And things can still very much get worse. A ship beset in the Antarctic pack ice is not a ship waiting for a tow. The ice is still moving, still compressing. If the pressure builds long enough, it can deform a hull. That is what crushed Shackleton's Endurance in 1915, and the Endurance was built specifically to resist it. The Scenic Eclipse II is ice-strengthened, not ice-hardened, and it was designed to push through pack ice, not sit inside it while the pack squeezes. The ship carries 2 helicopters, but you can't evacuate over 400 people by helicopter onto Antarctic sea ice with no infrastructure within 1,000 miles. The nearest port is in New Zealand, and the rescue window is narrowing. The same wind and current compressing the ice around the cruise ship have not stopped. Every hour the Scenic Eclipse sits in this field, the ice grips tighter. If the Polar Star cannot break it free, the next option is unclear, because there's no next option. The United States has one heavy icebreaker, and it's already here. This has to work. The Polar Star comes in along the starboard beam, close enough that the crew on both ships can see each other. It begins its first pass, breaking a channel parallel to the trapped vessel to relieve compression on one side. The ice cracks and separates along the starboard hull. Open water appears where solid ice has been seconds earlier. For the first time in hours, the cruise ship has room on one side. The Scenic Eclipse tries to work itself free. Engines reverse, forward. The Azipod propulsion churns water as the captain rocks the hull back and forth in the narrow space the icebreaker just opened. The boat shifts. It rocks. You can see it moving, inching backward, then forward, trying to widen the gap. But the ice pack still grips on 3 sides, and the wind and current driving the field together hasn't stopped because the Polar Star showed up. The channel the icebreaker just cut is already being squeezed shut by the surrounding pack pressing inward. One pass relieves pressure on one side. The ice is compressing from everywhere. A straight line is not going to work. One pass isn't enough. The channel the icebreaker just cut is already being squeezed shut. This isn't working. The captain has to try something else. The Polar Star swings wide and begins a full loop around the Scenic Eclipse. Not a second channel, but a ring, breaking the entire ice sheet surrounding the vessel. A channel relieves pressure on one axis and closes. A circle destroys the structural integrity of the entire field. Instead of one solid plate gripping the hull, the ice becomes dozens of separate pieces that can shift and rotate independently. Once the pieces can move, the cruise ship's propulsion can push them aside. That's the theory. Now a 13,000-ton icebreaker has to carve it into reality while circling a ship carrying over 400 people at a distance where one wrong heading correction sends a wall of broken ice into the cruise ship's hull. The first loop fractures the field but doesn't fully break it up, cracked but not free. The pieces are too large and still pressed together too tightly by the surrounding pack. The cruise ship needs smaller fragments and room for them to move. The Polar Star widens out and runs a second, larger circle, cracking the ice at a greater radius to give the inner pieces room to disperse. This loop takes longer, with more ice to break, more distance from the cruise ship, which means the crew has to judge whether the fractures are propagating inward far enough to reach the ice still gripping the vessel. The conning officer and the ice pilot call speed, heading, and distance continually. Too close, and the icebreaker's displacement shoves frozen flows into the cruise ship's hull. Too far, and the fractures stop before they reach the target. It's a very difficult maneuver, but one they had to pull off. After the second loop, the field is rubble, fractured, loose, free to shift instead of clamping the hull. But rubble is not freedom. The cruise ship still has to push through it, and if the Azipod propulsion can't move those fragments aside, the Polar Star then has to make a third pass. Every minute it spends circling is a minute the surrounding pack is pressing back in. The Scenic Eclipse begins to move. Engines reverse, then forward. Broken ice shifts around the hull and the Azipod system pushes fragments aside. The ship backs out of its trap position and swings into the channel of shattered ice behind the Polar Star. For the first time since the pack closed in, the cruise ship is underway. But the ship is still in danger. The Polar Star turns north and starts cutting toward open water, 4 nautical miles of pack ice between here and the open Ross Sea. 4 miles doesn't sound like much until you remember every yard of it has to be broken. The cruise ship follows in its wake, pushing through brash ice. The churned-up slurry of shattered fragments an icebreaker leaves behind. Brash ice has no structural strength. It's loose and fragmented, and an ice-strengthened hull can push it through without difficulty. And this escort is now a race against physics. Seawater at these temperatures loses heat fast, and new ice starts forming on the disturbed surface within hours. The channel the Polar Star is cutting is already beginning to skin over behind it. Thin sheets of fresh ice reaching across the open water like the ocean is trying to close a wound. If you've ever seen a puddle start to freeze on a cold morning, imagine that happening across a channel of open ocean in real time. The cruise ship has to keep pace, fall behind, and the path narrows. If it gets too narrow, the Scenic Eclipse II is working against fresh ice again, thinner than what trapped it, but thickening by the minute. A narrowing channel becomes a closing channel, and a closing channel becomes a trap. They just got out of one of those. The Polar Star keeps a steady pace, fast enough to maintain a usable channel, slow enough that the cruise ship behind it doesn't fall behind. It's a balancing act that depends on both ships reading the same ice at the same time, 4 miles of it, and then the ice thins, the pack loosens. The gaps between the floes widen from feet to yards to ship lengths, and the Scenic Eclipse crosses into open water. But the crew has no time to celebrate. Right now, the Polar Star is already turning south, back toward McMurdo Sound, where the ice still needs to be cut, so American science on this continent keeps running for another year. Bye for now.